Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the Battle of the Cairns with the Lizardmen on one end against the Brettonians on the other. And so, for my composition in this, I did decide to try something a little different with my Lord at least. And I did bring a Slan Mage Priest of High Magic. Now the Mage Priests are pretty atrocious in most ways. They don't have much going for them. They have a decent HP pool, but terrible melee stats. As you can see, they don't get any mounts, except unless you use Brettonia with Slack, of course. Terrible melee stats, pitiful armor. The only thing they really have going for them is 40% missile resist, which was upgraded after people realized, after I guess CA realized that these guys get sniped down very, very easily because they're big fat toads floating above everybody else. So, regardless, though, they have some pretty powerful magic, and I want to give it a shot. They do have a shield. You do have, for example, Shield of Sapphire, which is just an ability there. You do have Greater Arcane Conduit, which also means you're basically never going to run out of winds of magic. Good old Cold-Blooded, as usual for heroes, and then you get High Magic here. So we got. I did bring 4 spells. I wasn't entirely sure what I needed to bring, so I brought Apotheosis, Tempest, Arcane Forging, and Fiery Convocation. Tempest, of course, is a powerful anti-air vortex, and I wanted to use it to kind of snipe away at enemy lords, if at all possible, if they brought flyers, because Brettonia tends to do that. I also did bring the Blood Statue of Spite, which is basically a mini Fate of Buno effect. Aura of Quetzal, which is a survivability talent, essentially, for a survivability skill for the Slan Mage Priest, because otherwise you get annihilated in melee every time you got dived upon, and then a free cast of Banishment. Of course, free banishment is pretty awesome. That's like what Volkmar gets with his chariot. Alongside him, I did bring a Sarskar veteran, who I did bring the good old Plaque of Dominion on him for the -8 leadership effect, because I figured that if my opponent didn't bring a Grail Relic, I'd probably be able to tear out his troops. And then alongside that, I did also bring a Skink Chief on a Pterodon just to poke away at my opponent. Brettonians don't have the best of armor usually, so I'd probably be able to poke away at him a little bit over time. For my front line, it is composed entirely of 4 units of Sars Warriors with shields, just to get that extra melee defense and to get some defense against missiles, as well as 2 Temple Guards. Temple Guards anchoring the flanks to protect against enemy flyers and cavalry. Behind that, 2 units of Chameleon Skinks, on the side of that, 2 units of Chameleon Skinks ready to kind of poke away at my opponent, do some poison damage, that sort of stuff. If I get a nice Tempest, they can shoot someone down, all that good stuff. And then a Bastiladon with a Revocation Crystal, of course, for those heals and all that good, all that sort of stuff. And just the Bastiladon with the Revocation Crystal is actually really cheap at 1,000 gold, and it does give you 10 casts of Nehek, essentially, over the course of a very long battle. For my opponent, he did bring a very, very wide front line of mostly peasants. He's got 6 units of peasants here, actually. Which really gives him huge width, backed by 4 men-at-arms with polearms and 2 foot squires, as well as a Damsel of Life with regrowth. And she actually did not bring, interestingly enough, she did not bring Earthblood, though she did bring Lifebloom. And on the flanks, my opponent does have some Grail Knights over there, as well as some Grail Knights over here, and up in the air he does have Royal Hippos and King Lewin himself. Loading into full gear, you can see I'm already just pushing ahead. The Sars Warriors, once I saw these peasants, I was a little worried when I saw this initial number count, because of course Brettonians could go fairly wide and cheap with just normal infantry, but peasants, Sars Warriors will plow through them like a knife through butter. I did get a little bit of poke down on the Royal Hippogriffs, but it's nothing impressive. The Damsel will easily heal it up next time around. And in the meantime, I'm just trying to poke away at these Grail Knights a little bit with my Skink Chief. Unfortunately, they do have decent physical resist as well as armor, so he won't be able to do too much damage. You can see I'm trying to deal with the peasant mobs using the Sars Warriors. I don't want to commit my Temple Guard just yet. These Sars Warriors over here are trying to get a charge into the Foot Squires, which they will succeed, and these guys are going to get all bunched up. Foot Squires do have okay armor, but not the best of armor, honestly, at only 70, so they're actually going to get torn up by the Sars Warriors pretty quickly. You can see my opponent is trying to kind of dive into my backline here, and he's going to expose himself to a Tempest because of that. And you can see here it does go down, and these guys are going to take some pretty significant damage. They went with about 5,800, and they're going to... The Tempest is a combined sort of... you can see the Sarskar veteran has kind of jumped in and is doing some damage. So they're having a rough time. Although it actually looks like it did not freeze them, interestingly enough. Even though they were on foot, usually when they're on foot, it should freeze them. And it didn't there. I'm not entirely sure why. I do cast a Banishment here, it does some good damage. I did cast a Blood Statue of Spite prior on one of these poor men-at-arms. And see in the meantime, Temple Guard are collapsing on these men-at-arms polearms, trying to break them up. You see Sars Warriors there doing some damage. Normally, I'm pretty sure it freezes enemy flyers, even if they're on the ground, even if they're in the air, which was a little unfortunate here, and that's definitely one of the things that frustrated me. And over here, you can see the men-at-arms polearms. It's actually something I didn't even realize until watching it now. So that was definitely a little unfortunate. Chameleon Skinks over here are getting overrun by Grail Knights. I unfortunately once again a bit of miss micro. I had them pursuing and trying to apply pressure to some of these units over here, so they pushed up too close. And of course I never used skirmish mode. Over here though, you can see the Sarge Warriors with shields are smushing some peasants. And my opponent is going to be able to basically crush my shooting contingent. In the meantime, my good old Slan Mage Priest is just doing his best to stay alive, trying to run away. You can see the front line though is kind of buckling, just under the pressure of how much damage I've got. I've got a lot of powerful units. I've got Temple Guard. One of the good things my opponent is doing, or one of the things my opponent is doing really well, is isolating my kind of shooting troops and getting rid of my Chameleon Skinks, getting them off the field, which will be a problem in the long run. In the meantime, the Slan Mage Priest is racking up some kills. You can see another flight of Royal Hippogriffs comes in, and they've, as you can see, healed up with the Lore of Life. And they do get a rout on the Sarge Warriors' shields. One of the big problems is that Sarge Warriors, as well as even Temple Guard, do not have immunity to psychology, so if you can bust through that high leadership, they can actually get routed fairly easily. You can see the Sarge Veteran over here is taking some damage. The Bastildon is really beat up. But I'm poking away at Lewin, but Lewin of course does have that regen, so even if he doesn't get regrowths on him, he will slowly but surely replenish, which is rather frustrating. Over here you can see the Slan Mage Priest is getting attacked, so I did pop the R of Quetzal just to keep him alive. 57 melee defense is nothing to brag about, but it's much better than his pitiful 20 or so that he has otherwise. In the meantime, I do get another Tempest over here on Lewin, and I'm able to he does, however, pop Lion's Shield, which is going to give him 44% missile resistance, so definitely a good use of that ability. I definitely think that's a worthwhile ability to bring nowadays against factions that have Lore of High Magic, just because of how potent that Vortex can be. And in the meantime, though, my Skink Chief does get some poke damage done, but I decide to shift target and fly away to more fertile hunting grounds. In the meantime, though, the front line has kind of collapsed for my opponent, but his peasant mobs have kind of routed off. You can see the Starscar Veteran is doing whatever the heck he wants. Over here on the flank there's an isolated unit of Sarge Warriors who have been kind of fighting constantly against peasant mobs. And you can see that on their kill counts. Over here, the Bastildon does get caught out by a mob of enemy troops, which is really unfortunate. So I'm trying to kind of send troops there. I will shortly send these Temple Guards in. These guys are, of course, rampaging, so they're doing whatever the heck they want. And Lewin, as you can see, has hit his healing cap. I do try to cast a Banishment here just to zone him away, but it actually doesn't go off, which is fortunate for me in a way. But it is definitely one of those glitches. There have been glitches with the way spells with charges work, where you lose the charge and it doesn't go off. In the meantime, my Chameleon Skinks, who I was trying to pull back into the fray, are going to get immediately jumped on by the Grail Knights because I wasn't paying attention to them. Not that I could have done much against them. So what I'm trying to do now, knowing that I can't catch my opponent's cavalry, I am trying to kind of push out and crush my opponent's infantry over here. Fortunately, that means basically these troops are going to be sacrificed because they don't have, they're not controllable anymore. They're rampaging, which is one of the big problems, I suppose. You can see, though, they're still doing some damage to the Grail Knights, who only have 32 melee defense, and even the Royal Hippogriffs will potentially take some damage if they stick around too long. And I'm trying to get my Sarskar Veteran in there, do some damage. You can see Lewin is still floating at a huge amount of HP. He's not been knocked down to like 1,000, I think, for once this game already. I'm just kind of setting up a mop force here. My Slan Mage Priest is moving up. You can see the Temple Guard here, some Sarge Warriors over there. These guys should kind of stomp this whole pocket of infantry. I'm hoping that with the Temple Guard over here, the Sarskar Veteran and the Bastildon should be able to do some damage. But you can see the Sword of Corone does go down, which is going to nuke down my melee defense and my armor. And of course, there's a lot of armor-piercing units here too. You can see regrowth going down on the Royal Hippogriffs. The Royal Hippogriffs have gotten huge buffs. For those of you who don't know, they've gotten a lot more. They have a lot more armor. They've gone from 60 to 80. They've got 20% physical resist built in now, so they're much more powerful. I do cast another Tempest here, and it doesn't actually catch the ground, so I suppose it's been changed. Before, it could catch units on the ground, as long as it was a flyer, it would cause damage to them on the ground, or it would catch them on the ground. But now it seems to no longer do that, which is rather unfortunate. That's definitely a bit of a problem, I think, or unfortunate thing. And you can see, so I did get kind of waste 2 Tempests there, because simply they do go off. They do consider it a flying unit, but then they don't cause any damage. You can see in the meantime, though, I'm trying to poke away at these Royal Hippogriffs. They're down to 3 models. I'm trying to kind of have the Skink Chief poke away at him. He does accidentally pick off a Grail Knight there instead. And the Temple Guard's still around kicking. The Sarge Warrior, I do cast a Cold-Blooded on him, trying to slow him down from running off and doing something dumb. And also just to heal him up back to a more respectable amount of HP. And now I'm sending Temple Guard over here to try to protect him against Lewin if Lewin decides to come in for a dive. And of course, Lewin does think better of it and decide to back off. Lewin is being poisoned. He is going to go after my Skink Chief, but he can't actually really pursue the Skink Chief. The Skink Chief with poison application is just going to be able to run away as long as needed. And so now I've left this rampaging group of Sarge Warriors to clean up shop in the back. They're dealing with these foot squires rather efficiently. These guys hit like trucks, so against anything with less than like 100 armor, they'll do really, really well. Over here, the men-at-arms are being terror-routed off by the Sarskar veteran, who's rampaging, of course. And over on this flank, the Bastillodon is finally going to go down. Or actually, it's Sarge Warriors, I do believe. Bastillodon went down a little while earlier. So you can see my opponent is definitely doing a great job kind of isolating my units, taking advantage of his mobility to shut me down that way. Now my Sarskar veteran is of course rampaging, so he's just going to do whatever the heck he wants, and that's of course not what I was hoping for. I do, however, get a blood statuette on one of these guys, and you can see it it's the effect you can see is rising up from him. It's hitting one of the units. It's hard to tell, but it does a little bit of damage. And now Temple Guard are plowing in, trying to kind of help as the Sarskar veteran is getting torn apart, and he will go down like a 9-pin. There's nothing really I can do about that. But I'm trying to pick apart the Royal Hippogriffs with the help of the Skink Chief, and it's actually working out rather well. I do get another Tempest over here, and I do manage to catch Lewin up in the sky. And of course, that's going to mean it's going to do a lot of damage. Now, the Tempest doesn't work in the same way as the Net of a Mintok, in the sense that it nets whatever's in the AoE after it's been cast, but it does do damage to whatever is in the AoE when it's cast. It's a targeted spell. And you can see that the Royal Hippogriffs have routed, and at this point my opponent's army does shatter for a Pyrrhic victory. There were a few mistakes I made. The first and foremost was trying to cast Tempests when my opponent's flyers were on the ground, which wasted a good 2 Tempest casts that game. Due to the fact that I did believe it simply does damage to flyers. I do believe the Howling Warp Gale will actually lock down flyers even if they're on the ground. So I'd kind of assumed the Tempest would work the same, and it didn't. So that was a bit unfortunate. That said, all in all, I do think this is a fairly competitive build against Brettonia. I definitely made serious mistakes with my use of the Chameleon Skinks. I should have definitely kept them further back. Used them to kind of snipe away at the Royal Hippogriff Knights. I should have definitely saved my Howling Tempest for when they tried to take off from the ground, because what I could have done is zoned him away with the Sarskar veteran and then nuked him down with the Howling Tempest. Yeah, otherwise Temple Guard did great. They kind of anchored the line at the end, because at the end the Sarge Warriors just kind of fell apart because they were rampaging all over the place and were out of control. These Sarge Warriors, though, to over 200 kills, obviously tearing through peasant mobs is easy going for them. Bastillodon did an okay job early on with the Rification Crystals, though it got sniped fairly early. The Skink Chief was great at just applying pressure. Most of these kills would have been Grail Knights, probably some Royal Hippogriff Knights, and he was just doing damage to the units. And the Skink Chief's a pretty useful tool just for that, because he's cheap at 750 gold, and he can just apply a constant stream of pressure to some high-value target. For my opponent's build, I do think this is an interesting take on things. The peasant mobs are, of course, rather cheap. This is about 500 gold in peasant mobs. I do think this is a very anti-large build, which means it's going to struggle against more of an infantry-centric build like what I did here. Definitely, I think it wouldn't have gone as well if I'd actually been on top of landing my Tempests. But at the same time, definitely, I think this is a decent build. I'm very iffy about bringing flyers against factions that bring high magic nowadays. I think that generally, if I play against High Elves or if I play against Lizardmen, I don't bother bringing Flying Lords or Flying units anymore, because the lore of High Magic, if you do get caught in that vortex, you're basically going to get wrecked. So just my 2 cents. But obviously with regrowth, you can kind of get away with it a little bit. It's definitely a good game to my opponent. Very interesting build. He did drag it out and definitely drag me around in the mud, making great use of his mobility to just crush my units that rampaged off. It's like Sarskar veteran and some of the Sarge Warriors, and of course the Bastillodon when he got routed, and of course Chameleon Skinks. She just had a huge edge in mobility. I was really relying on my leadership to kind of stick around and not have my units break, and when they did, they were basically doomed. So good game to my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about the game or anything like that, be sure to post them down in the comments, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.